Hello, everyone, and welcome to my live podcast, first live podcast on Twitch. I already had a problem before my stream died, so this is a second try. This is what happens when you're doing live stuff, so it's gonna get messy. There's gonna be, I don't know, I think there's gonna be two versions of it, right? There's gonna be the raw version of it. I've got this game running in the background, which I'm not really gonna play. It's just stuff to run in the background. I might even turn off the game audio. It really depends. I've turned the audio down on stream though, so it might not. Hopefully, it won't be too interruptive. Um, what else? Yeah, there might be edits. So the first version would be the raw version, and you can see the graphics of whatever I'm doing. I might switch out. It really depends. The second one is a recording of the audio. I'm using a separate program for that to record it locally to get a slightly better quality. And there may or may not be editing, and I may or may not keep the bits where might respond to people. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I've got a rough outline what I'm going to be talking about. Uh, yeah, as I say, I'm not quite sure how much of it I'll be editing out. What else? From time to time, I might play the game. Oh yeah, in the Twitch raw quote unquote version of it, you're gonna hear some game audio as well. So I'm gonna do this. Let's have a look here. Okay. My experience with making a video. How long has it been already? More than a month, 2 months, or something like that, right? It's been more than 2 months since I've recorded and uploaded something. The last stuff that I did was on the games that I'll be playing mid to late 2020. It was a enjoyable experience recording that. I mean, with that one, I had to write out the script, put some footages together from game trailers, and I had fun in doing it. I quite like it. See, I gotta cut that out with the filling out the spaces. The recording, the writing of the script and reading out wasn't that bad. I mean, I like that because I get to think what to put together, how to put the bits together, like how I want it to look. And I think even writing the script wasn't too much of a problem for me. The parts which took up a lot of time is trying to edit. I mean, I had fun doing it, but it took up quite a considerable amount of time. I mean, it's expected. The video was about 17 minutes long, I think, roughly. It's been a while, so a lot of stuff has it's like a vague memory now. Putting oh, like reading it felt like I was just reading out the script, of course. So it's something that I'm trying to get used to. The other parts, I mean, I'm comparing with the podcast which I've done with the video, which had a lot more production. I won't say the word value, production input, I suppose. Like, I had to think about what to do. I feel like in terms of the edit, it didn't take as much time, but then again, it was only 17 minutes versus podcast, which is like 50 plus minutes long. But there was something else that seemed like it took a lot more time with the podcast. It's not just the length, but like I'll notice it when I play back, especially like right now. If I play back, I'll know what the issues are, and that's to do with how I'm saying certain words, the pauses between the words, the sentences, how I'm structuring things. But that's just one part of it. And the other part is breathing. I didn't realize how badly I I sound when I'm just talking and you can hear the breathing, as well as the I know people hate that word, this word, it's the word moist, or lack of moist. It's like getting the right balance of moisture in the mouth to talk, to speak properly. I think that's difficult for me anyway. But I think that's not as bothersome as the breathing sound. And I started looking up YouTube clips on how people would do their audio. This what is it? It's not vlog. This speaking thing. Let's see, I've completely forgotten how they speak. In audio novels, is that what it's called? It's not audio novels, but it's just how they speak essentially. And one person said that he definitely sounded like a professional to me. He said there's nothing wrong with having breathing sound. It's natural. It becomes very unnatural when you try to edit all those bits and pieces out. And I sort of get that now. But it still bothers me because I'm sitting there editing through this file and going, that is a lot of breathing sound. See, I can hear myself right now. I'm becoming really self-conscious. And like comparing with my last podcast, which I'd done, I was saying, oh, I'll try to keep some of the dead spaces to make it sound natural, but instead I didn't. I ended up editing a lot of the bits out, which is, it sounded not sped up, but like a lot of the spaces are gone. It just sounded like a run-on sentence. Oh, the other thing as well I want to mention in this podcast is see, the way that I speak in terms of flowing from one subject to another. It sometimes I'll start talking about something else and then I'll come back around to it. So it's very loosely structured in some ways, and that's how my notes are as well. And that's the basic idea. So right now I'm just doing some gaming bits in this game in front of me. For those that are not watching this and just listening to the audio version of it, which is fine. This is just to give some sort of visual entertainment for those that are watching. Right, so what I was trying to do with the comparison with the scripted video and podcast stuff was, because I've scripted it, I have an idea of when I should be doing the breathing or saying certain words, whereas the podcast, it almost is, what would you call it, like a stream of consciousness with some guided outline sort of thing. So that's a rough idea behind it anyway. That's what I wanted to say. I like to take the opportunity of doing podcasts because whenever I'm just streaming a game, I can't really put together a cohesive and coherent sentence structures because I'm just like focused on playing the game. So it will just be I'll I don't know, drive a vehicle or use some sort of weaponry or just jumping around, running around. I'm saying something and then I just pause for ages and then I'll continue with it, or not even continue with it at all. And that's the problem. Whereas with podcasts, I can just talk, even though I'm rambling a lot of the time. But hopefully, not as much as I normally do. Right. So I've got the script on the other side of my screen. Let's have a look. I should have put this in another. I'm just using like a a notepad type thing, so that my eyesight is not that good. So you have to bear with me for a moment. Uh, right. I want to talk about spaces in between or transitional areas in games, but I don't feel like I've got enough material for that. And I'm trying to tie in with the idea of liminal spaces. I think some of you might have heard of these things. I think they might have been called something else as well. But they with liminal spaces, people tend to make it into what looks like creepy photos, but it was all right. So just a rough idea. This is what I understand anyway of liminal spaces. People take photos of, say, malls where there's no longer any people, or houses which or rows of houses where there's like no human activity, and sometimes it just seems, and I don't like using this word, uncanny, because that word's been thrown around quite frequently, but it is a shortcut which I'm guilty of using anyway. So it makes these places look creepy, but that has to do, like, if you look at the older photos, it's got to do with the lighting effects as well, and where the camera is pointed at, things like that. There are tons of videos about this on the internet, and I find that subject very interesting. It can create a weird atmosphere, but that's not the aspect that I'm trying. That's the aspect I'm not wanting to talk about. The What I want to talk about in terms of liminal space in comparison with certain games is the idea of the transitional places, right? Like, in some of these liminal places, what makes it look creepy or out of place, for example, an empty mall, is that it's empty, right? If you're there in person, it doesn't feel that way, but you're looking at this snapshot in time. With games, there's these empty spaces. I'm not talking about the creepy part of those places. See, this is where I'm trying to stretch the subject a bit, and I haven't really thought about it carefully. So this is another thing you gotta remember with my podcast. Sometimes I try to think about an idea and try to explain it, and then I'll get to a certain point. I'm thinking, wait, that doesn't even make sense. So I feel like I'm getting there. What is the point I'm trying to make with these spaces? Forget about the creepy part. I'm talking about the spaces in between. So with the mall example, you won't realize that it's weird or out of place when you're there, right? And in your memory, you don't even think about that. You just think about it's a place that you go to or a place that you go through. Hence why I use the word a transitional zone or area or space. That might not be the appropriate word to use, but I'm using it in this context. So in games, what I'm trying to say is, in terms of like massive open world games, which I played a lot, right? And the example I'm trying to bring in now is Death Stranding. All right. It took me a long while to get there. I know. Oh, and here's the other thing. There's going to be some spoilers, okay? But I'm talking from maybe a thematic point of view rather than the plot, or maybe parts of the mechanics, the gameplay mechanics in Death Stranding. So Death Stranding, I've sunk in about maybe 40 hours already, and I didn't feel like I put in 40 hours. Like, I mean, I haven't. I can see that I put in 40 hours, but and I have a feeling that it is 40 hours, but it didn't feel like it's a drudgery to me. Does that sort of make sense? What I'm trying to say is, in that game, there's a lot of going from point A to point B, right? And there's a lot of that, and carrying stuff, going across terrains and things like that. But it didn't feel like a drudgery to me. And I mean, I barely understand what's going on with the plot. the characters and things like that. But the enjoyment, and I use this a lot in my description, is the zen-like experience of the travel. I I don't really feel that with a lot of games. I mean, let's compare it with something like on the extreme end, not extreme end, on another end. Um, I don't know, spectrum. I also don't like using that word. It doesn't quite describe what I want to describe, but it's somewhat sufficient. See, I gotta stop saying. I'm just gonna do some stuff with the game here. I'll try to edit it out for the audio part. I'll try. The point I'm trying to make is, I don't feel like I've walked through hours and hours between certain points, right? Because of that idea of a transitional zone. Again, this is why I'm making a very loose connection with the concept of the whole liminal spaces. The thing that I'm trying to separate from and compare between the two concepts is the idea of the transitional space. You don't think about it until if you look back at it as a snapshot, you think, oh wait, that is odd, or it just stands out rather than odd. So with Death Stranding is somewhat similar, not in terms of a creepy perspective, even though there is a creepy perspective. Again, I'm stretching this, like I'm trying to make a connection where there's barely any connection between the two ideas, but I'm attempting to do that. Gotta stop doing that. Oh. That's why I find it so fascinating. That space of time, I don't remember it as it being very lengthy, which is I find that very interesting. If something feels like a drudgery, I mean that it just feels like time is dragging itself in a negative way, if that makes sense. So if you're doing something and that's a drag, right? And it takes a long time, it feels like a drudgery. It feels boring, it feels dull, right? But I don't really feel that. It's such a strange feeling with Death Stranding. And I enjoyed traversing the terrain. There are frustrations, obviously, but it doesn't overshadow the whole game itself. I mean, from what I'm playing so far. So that's the only way I could describe it. But alright, I'm gonna try to move to another subject. I know I took a long time trying to compare the two. I'll have another think about it. There might be something else, but most likely not. The other bits, since we're talking about Death Stranding, is like getting your packages sorted and trying to figure out, oh, which of the items do I need in order to move forward and survive the environment. It's not really a survival sim, it's not really a stealth, it's definitely not a combat type sim, but it does have those elements in it. And I could feel that the focus is more of a hiking simulator. I mean, you could call it a walking simulator, but it's a bit more than that. You sort of have to work with the environment. And yeah, travel along it and see the amazing sights in it. That's the other thing I like about that game. It's the amazing scenery. I mean, if I were to break it down to this level, it just sounds very, very boring. I mean, even though, I mean, I've heard other people playing it and still find it dull. But yeah, it's definitely a very, very personal thing. What else is there? I wanted to talk about... I mean, we can come back and talk about Death Stranding some more later on. But I think that's the main thing behind what I'm trying to say. Oh, that's right. The collaborative component of that game, which I really like as well. Again, this is a bit of a spoiler for those that haven't played it and want to play it. So you can just switch off for the next couple minutes. The idea is that you can contribute to the environment and other players can use those those structures that you built to help them in their journey. It's a collaborative effort, and I find that to be amazing. You don't see the other players, but you see the structures that they leave behind, and you could do the same thing as well, vehicles and whatnot, to help them traverse this world. I don't think it's a unique or original idea, but I just find it works so well in the game, and I really like that. I hope to see more of that sort of concept in the future. And okay, what else? I'm gonna try to move on to how long have I been on already? Right, 22 minutes. Not too bad. Oh, Disco Elysium. Again, there's gonna be some spoilers, but I'm going to talk about it in a more conceptual and thematic way. Which is what that's how I view a lot of the games, beside the gameplay component. Wait, I missed something, didn't I? I was gonna compare between, say, Death Stranding and another game on a different spectrum, didn't I? See, I've forgotten and now I've come back again. I do that all the time. I don't know if it's worth doing that sort of comparison. So I'll skip that. I'll skip that entirely. Even with a outline, I still don't like. I can sidetrack a lot because there's some stuff that I don't even have on the outline. I'm just gonna try to do something in the game world right now. Let's see. That's right. Disco Elysium. So I've read some things on posts and things like that, and people feel like maybe with that game you get to be a really, really awful person. I don't feel that way, but then again, I didn't pick a lot of the other choices. The route that I decided to go for was a goody two-shoe, right? I've always tried to do a really nice guy, goody two-shoe type of character in games. That's just how I like to do it. Play those characters. I'm saying how I played it. There are options that would go against that, but I don't feel like that's the idea of that game. For me, like from what I've experienced, it feels more like a self-reflection, a game on a introspective view, like with the choices that you can pick, even though they might be awful. I think rather than having you go with that idea, it is go with that route. It's more to do with thinking about those choices as well, if that makes sense. Though I can't say because I didn't go down those other routes, but with the choices that I made, I feel like there's this general idea of self-reflection, and I really like that. I could be completely off base here, but from what I experienced, that's what I feel about it. And I think a lot of games, if there are more games with that sort of idea of self-reflection and introspection, I think that's a good thing. You know, like making you think these are the choices that I picked, and you might not necessarily see your actions reflected in a necessarily obvious and impactful manner, but instead it presents itself in a more, I don't want to use the word philosophical or psychological, but it presents the story in a way that you can just have a look and go, rather than think, is it a right thing or a bad thing? Is it what you want as a character? And how does it make you feel about it? It's hard to say, but I would like to be able to give some solid examples. But as I say, I picked a path that is seemingly obvious as a goody two-shoe type. But this is just a very general feeling that I get from that game. The other thing as well, it's been many months since I played it, but it left some sort of impression on me still. And that's what I wanted to talk. I could, as I say, I could be completely wrong. I'm sure there's other people who went down a completely different path. But my understanding, don't worry, I'm not going to spoil the ending. It doesn't. Everything that you experience in that game, I think, with the paths that you pick, it doesn't necessarily mean that your character is far from what they're meant to be. Does that make sense? Maybe that's too nonsensical. Yeah, maybe. Right. What else did I want to talk about? I wrote down not quite about the consequences of actions and decisions. Oh, okay. I did note down two characters, Kuno and Measurehead. For those that are aware of those characters, I mean, though that, especially Measurehead, I think that's his name. It's that's a really tough subject to talk about. Maybe I'm gonna try to put those two aside for the time being. But for those that played the game, you know what I'm talking about. Maybe I can do a spoiler version of that game. I mean, even doing the spoiler version of that game can be quite, like, I gotta have to figure out some way to talk about it in a structured manner. Interesting. I'll just put a pass on that one for now, because it's those two characters are quite difficult to talk about, I think. Oh, all right. Fallout 76. That's one of, like, I'm gonna try to talk about games that I'm not gonna be playing anymore, or why I've stopped playing them. Fallout 76 is one of them. Look, I like Fallout 4. I liked, and I've sunk in like 100+ hours. That's only because it's got all the mods in there, right? And it's mad. I like walking around that world, but I made Fallout 4 into like a RPG light first person shooter game set in a Fallout world. That's how I did it. But when I start playing Fallout 76, I like this idea of other characters being around, and the ones I've encountered so far I didn't get any troll problem. I had one guy, I don't know if I mentioned this before, he left like ammo for me on the floor, didn't say a word. Very nice, like a bag of ammo. And the problem I have with the game is the survival mechanics, even when it's like what would you call it? It's a survival light mechanics, right? But you have to like drink and eat, watch out for radiation, your weapon breaks down, your armor breaks down. I mean, those things I can deal with, but the food and drink, almost every 5 minutes I'm drinking, I have to drink something, and I don't even have the filter yet for clean water, so I have to look out for clean water. Oh, it just keeps on going like that. I mean, I don't even mind some of the jankier parts of that game, but like when I'm adventuring, going out, which I love doing in that game, right? I've been looking for Fallout, like first person Fallout that has a massive map, and Fallout 76 has that, but what stopped me from continuing with it is the whole survival mechanics or survival light mechanics. I mean, I've read, other people say that those things are not even a problem after a while. But I just feel like it's very interruptive, You're just looking down at your inventory, drinking, eating constantly, or dealing with sickness. I get the sickness part or the radiation poisoning. That's fine, but having to deal with the food and the drink, it really put me off. I don't know if I'll ever get back to it. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for 76. I don't know if I'll get back. I might someday, but there's a lot of games coming out that I want to play very soon. What else? Oh, this is a bit of a brief thing, a brief annoyance of mine in looter shooters. So why haven't anyone implemented? And I was playing Borderlands 3. This was a few months back. Why hasn't anyone implemented a way of picking up stuff and marking it as junk straight away, rather than going to your bag and marking it as junk? There must be a way of doing it quickly, right? It would make things move along so quickly. But I'm terrible with looter shooters because I would stare at the weapons, whatever, armor, whatever, for a long time in my bag. That's why I don't tend to play them a lot. It's funny, like, I'm thinking, what am I doing? I'm staring at my screen for an hour, not an hour plus. It feels like an hour, but it's probably like 20-30 minutes, trying to figure out what weapons I should destroy or get rid or sell, whatever. Anyway, one of the things that could sort of make things easier is if you look it on the floor, you can pick it up and automatically marks it as a junk. I don't know, a quick key, Control F, Control E, I don't know, something along those lines. Well, that's a minor thing. Yeah, it goes for any hack and slash looter, combat looter. Now I will talk about Marvel Avengers. I did not think I would actually be playing that game. When I first saw the videos on it, it just looked extremely hectic, extremely hectic. For me, anyway. It's just flashing lights, excessive particle effects, screen shakes, zoom in, zoom out. I saw like with Hulk, especially in the Hulk gameplay on the beta. I didn't play the beta. It was just, it felt like it was out of control. Like, even one of the YouTubers who did a video on it, and the person I'm assuming is way younger than I am, it mentioned that it was just the camera and the camera shakes, and with things exploding all around was a bit too much for him. Like for me, it's way too much. But then I ended up buying the game anyway, and I like the story, the characters, the voice acting, all that stuff is great. And it let me modify quite a few things as well, like how much the camera would be shaking. I like that. I like that option. A lot more games should have that level of customizability. Customizable. It's a lot more customizable. Anyway. And that was really helpful. I think you can even control how much of the camera zooms in and out. That's nice as well. And it helped. It helped a lot. But still, I feel like the game is quite hectic. It is a a looter game anyway. I and yes, I have ended up looking at my screen thinking, oh, which of these things should I be removing? It happens, right? So I don't know when I'll go back into it. I've sunk in, excuse me, about 4 hours maybe a bit more than that. Uh, it runs all right on my computer, but that's not saying much at all. I think ultimately it being a looter game has sort of slowed me down in terms of going back to play it. But it's not just that. It's not just because it's a looter game, but how the combat, maybe not how the combat's handled, how the enemies, um, how I don't know, and I don't like using this word either. It it's prevalent in a lot of looter shooter or looter combat games, and that's the bullet sponginess of the enemies. And I played Division 1 and 2, and I really I wasn't bothered by it that much. But with Avengers, it felt a bit too much, even for what people might call trash mobs. Is that what do people still call them that? Or is there something else? They feel a bit too bullet spongy, even though you're not really using bullet. I mean, for my few characters, but that's the general thing of it anyway. The general word I'm gonna use, you know what I mean. Even for like the enemies that are not meant to be, I don't know, above the lower tier ones. I keep trying to compare it with things like Diablo. Like with Diablo, the trash mobs are trash mobs, right? You like 1-2 hit, they're gone, but you get swarmed by them. But it doesn't feel that bad with Avengers. You get a whole heap of them just swarming you, and it can get really overwhelming for me anyway. And it takes quite a few hits to take them down. I'm still in the early stages with really low level gear. Anyway, that's just a very minor gripe. I don't think it really has any problems. I mean, the other people have problem with it that is beyond what I play. Right. Let's continue, shall we? I've got Watch Dogs Legion and Watch Dogs 2, and I didn't really write what I'm going to talk about them, but I have a rough idea. I like the really hopeful nature of Watch Dogs 2. I like Marcus's character. I like all the characters in there. Even the so-called villains in that game. Whereas Legion is a completely different take, right? It's almost a totalitarian type of world in that timeline. I get they're trying to shift to make it a bit darker. I really hope there is some type of humor in it rather than the gritty, dark humor. But something maybe a little bit cheesy. You get that with Watch Dogs 2. You know, a bit of dorkiness. I like that stuff, the banter between the characters, and I'm gonna miss that. And yeah, I know it's unfair to compare the two games, and I know people like maybe a darker version of it, like Watch Dogs 1, but I'm talking from a personal point of view here. I'll play Watch Dogs Legion. Something I've been waiting for a while, and I like the Watch Dogs concept anyway. I hope there's enough of a varied mission or quest line rather than just going around recruiting people. I know the idea is you pick the person or the people with I suppose they're perks or skills that are most appropriate for a particular mission, maybe. or most to your liking, and I will try to run the game, play the game in a less, what is it? No, I'll try to play it in a non-lethal way as much as I can, just like the other Watch Dogs. I know Watch Dogs 1 was not like I was struggling to try to do non-lethal in that game. A lot of baton moves, but there were quite a few missions, I think, in that one where you have to take down like a convoy, and I had to use explosives. It was insane. It was just too much. Right. I can't think of anything else. Yeah, I'm just worried about what the story is going to be like, what the character interaction is going to be like. Are they still going to be character interactions? Or are they going to feel very samey? I think I sort of talked about this in my video on the games I'm going to be playing. Oh, funnily enough, all right, I'm gonna go back to Death Stranding. Oh no, hang on. I have been playing Horizon Zero Dawn, and in my video, I predicted that I'll be spending more time on Horizon Zero Dawn than Death Stranding. I've spent roughly, I think, 20 hours in Horizon Zero Dawn. All right, now I'll talk about that. And there's a few things that really hasn't clicked with me in that game. It's very strange. I feel like I'm drawn more to Death Stranding than Horizon Zero Dawn. Not because, I mean, Horizon Zero Dawn looks incredible. I haven't really had big problems with it. Some minor stuttering here and there. It looks fabulous. It looks beautiful. It looks really, really nice. But in terms of part of the gameplay mechanics, I'm not very used to. And that gameplay, like, for example, one of the things that got me was the character movements. And it felt like it reminded me of the recent Lara Croft games from 2014, I think, something like that. The one made by Crystal Dynamics, who went on to make Avengers. Wait, did they make? Yes, they did. The character Aloy reminded me of Lara Croft in terms of the movement. There's some sense of weightlessness in the character. It's very strange. It's not very bouncy, but it just felt like the character's bouncy and lacking in certain precise movements. And this is coming from someone who's played Assassin's Creed from Syndicate. I know I didn't play I played briefly previous one, but the ones that I liked were recently Syndicate Origins and Odyssey, and those characters felt like there's weight to them, right? Even though in Syndicate, I think the character felt even more heavier in comparison to the recent characters, but they felt right. They felt like they were in some ways grounded, if that makes sense. When I'm playing as Aloy, it didn't feel like that. It felt like she could just suddenly not slip off, but the movements are just not very precise, if that makes sense. I guess she could easily just jump off if I didn't do it right. That doesn't make sense. I mean, of course she's going to jump off if I press the wrong button. But no, wait, what am I saying but for? The character Aloy, I got used to the handling. It could be because I've been playing at the same time Death Stranding, with a character that is very grounded and almost to a very extreme. You have to be careful how you handle that character. So it's tuned so well to the weight, the carrying of items, packages, and things like that for Death Stranding. And then just jumping between that and Aloy, it just felt out of place for me. It's a sudden shift, and sometimes it takes me a bit of time to readjust. That's the comparison I made. It's not a fair comparison because one is about a game that you're transporting packages that you have to be careful about. The other game is an action, third person type of game. But I sort of got used to Aloy's movements after a while. The other thing that I wasn't used to is the bow and arrow in that game. I don't know why, even after all this time, I still have difficulties using the bow and arrow. I don't know why. I'm missing a lot of the shots. Maybe I'm just panicking when I'm being attacked from the skies, from creatures. I'm thankful that there's like a slowdown mode when you aim, and I think I've maxed out that slowdown mode as well. Oh, have I? Anyway, and yeah, the fights do get intense when you have several enemies attacking you with the robots. I think trying to aim for their weak spots and using the right bow and arrow, using the, whether it's electricity or no, yes. Yeah, the different tips, and you can use traps and stuff like that. I still haven't gotten to the flow of it. And I played as Bayek in Assassin's Creed Origins, and I love the arrow. And I might be terrible with it now if I went back and play it, but I could be doing sniping in a lot of the scenarios when I'm like invading their bases, and I enjoyed that. Then it changed it quite a bit in Odyssey. Even so, the bow and arrow in Odyssey was still, like, to me, enjoyable, but I find it difficult to get used to that, to get into that flow with Horizon Zero Dawn. I don't know why. I don't get it. Like, there's a few scenarios where the arrows would just go to the left or right when you're just pointing straight at the target where the reticule is, and I wasn't moving at all. I realized that it's to do with the different type of bows and the distance between you and the object, or the target rather. That's where the problem is for me. Like, I didn't realize, oh yeah, it's too far, so the arrow just goes to the left or right. And sometimes, even when I'm using, say, a long distance arrow, if I try to not spam it, I suppose you could say spam it, the arrow still goes off the mark. I don't quite get that. I don't think it simulates wind or anything in that game, right? Where the wind would just throw the arrows out of into the wrong direction. As I say, I'm confused. I don't quite understand how it works. I made some accurate shots before, but I'm just not as confident with it as I am with the other games that I mentioned. I don't know what. Just give me a minute here. I'm going to try. I don't understand that. Right, so that's that. I hope to be able to play some more of it. Apparently, Horizon Zero Dawn is quite a short game as well. I've been doing the main quest line only rather than done some of the side quests just to get, some loot and XPs, and that's pretty much it. I like the characters. I like Aloy. Story seems okay so far. But yeah, the gameplay I just haven't connected with. Anyway, just moving forward. Ubisoft did announce Far Cry 6 next year. Definitely gonna get that. I didn't realize we're going back to a jungle type environment. Oops, sorry, knocked the table. I'm not really fond of the jungle in Far Cry games, and I play Far Cry 3. I prefer the woods in Far Cry 5. I like that sort of environment, but we'll see. We'll see what it's gonna be like. I mean, it's a Far Cry game. I'll play it. I'll play it. I think there's some urban areas as well, buildings you can go in. I think there's something like that in the screenshot. It'll be nice. And apparently the characters talk this time rather than being silent. I think the last character that spoke was Far Cry 4, right? and 3. That's it. Nothing much to say. Oh, and I think you can ride a horse as well, which is pretty cool. Hope to see more of it. More screenshots. Gameplay. They haven't shown any gameplay. They showed like a cinematic for it. I'm intrigued. And I'll get it. I'll play it. Excuse me. What else? Oh, Shadow Warriors 3. I didn't finish 2. I finished 1. Shadow Warriors. 1 was alright. It felt like it was dragged out at certain points. Story was pretty cool. I think that's one of the earlier games that I'd streamed. It was enjoyable. And then I tried playing 2. I sort of like, I mean, I get what they were trying to do with the, it was sort of like a looter shooter as well. But the environment was getting too repetitive for me. And I think I never got used to the melee combat as well. It was fine in terms of a shooter, but I don't think I ever finished it. It just felt like it was getting too repetitive for me. But 3 looked pretty cool. I mean, I don't know if I want to finish 2 first before moving on to 3. I might. We'll see. What else? What else is there? Oh. I think some people have speculated that there might be another Assassin's Creed. So we're getting Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which is another game I'll be playing at the end of the year. End of the year? No, November. Like 10th of November or something like that. Just before Cyberpunk comes out. I think that's one of the other reasons beside the release of Xbox. Okay. It's most likely because of Xbox release that they're coming out with Assassin's Creed. But I have a feeling I forgot when is Cyberpunk coming out. I think it's now before Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And trying to get away from that juggernaut. Let me just quickly check that. Yeah, 19th of November for Cyberpunk. Yeah. Yeah, my speculation is that there might be another Assassin's Creed. I mean, others have said this as well. Beginning of 21, maybe, or end of 20, we might see another Assassin's Creed. I think that's what happened with Origins, right? There was a short period of time between Origins and Odyssey. I mean, I can do a quick check right now. Let's see. So let's see. Odyssey was released 5th October 2018. And Origins. Oh, hang on. What is this? October 27th. 2017. So roughly a year. Oh, hang on. Yeah, so we might see. Sorry, I'm getting my dates mixed up. I think I said a new one at 20. We are 2020. 2021. Sorry, 2021. We'll see another one. End of 2021, right? That we might see another Assassin's Creed. And I have a feeling it might be based on King Arthur's legend or myth. And that would be interesting because we are, like, with Valhalla, we're playing as a Viking, right? And they're entering the that medieval period of time, right? So I suspect that we might be getting one which is based on King Arthur's legend. Maybe for the next one. So it sort of flows on, sort of like with the, well, it doesn't. It's sort of similar with the ancient Egypt. It's not quite, because with the ancient Greece stuff, I think it's slightly before. They sort of have a period of time where Romans, Greeks, and Egyptians, they're like on the same point in time. I could be completely wrong there. Let me have a quick look. Ancient Greece. Now this is becoming a historical lesson. Egypt, Roman time. The late period of ancient Egyptian history came to an end at 332 BC when Egypt was conquered by the Greeks. The Greeks formed their own dynasty called the Ptolemaic dynasty that ruled for nearly 300 years until 30 BC. In 30 BC, the Romans took control of Egypt. The Romans ruled for over 600 years until around 640 AD. And that's quoted from Ducksters. Okay, thank you. So, all right. So I think that might be happening. I mean, with the Arthur, King Arthur period. But the King Arthur stuff, I think that's just a myth. So I don't know how they're gonna do it. They might mix it up a bit, try to bring in some actual mix it with historical stuff. I don't know. I'm just guessing here, because apparently Ubisoft was trying to, someone was trying to make a fantasy game that has some King Arthur element in it, but it got canned, right? I think it was meant to be, it had some similarities to Monster Hunter as well. I could be completely wrong here. And the person who made that, he's not there anymore, who came up with the idea. There were some internal issues as well, as some of you might know. I think they might maybe use some of the ideas from that cancelled game in their new Assassin's Creed. But it depends, right? It really depends, because that idea belongs to the person, maybe. But it depends on how they've written their contract, like saying, all right, if you come up with these ideas, we can use these ideas on some other games. We can cannibalize. That's a horrible thing to say, but it's possible they might do that, right? I don't know. It really depends on how they've written the contract. Right. It will be interesting if they do use part of it in the new Assassin's Creed game. So there you go. Oh, I didn't know there's a timer in this game. Okay. Arthurian, is that the word? Is that a word? Let me just look that up. Yeah, Arthurian legend. That's not how you pronounce it though. I don't know. That's right. His name is Mike Laidlaw. Yeah, he came out with a fantasy game. Huh. Completely locked out, eh? Right. What else is there? Oh, on a different sort of subject, back to Far Cry. Far Cry 5 had a interesting idea where it was annoying, I gotta say, where after a while, after a certain moment in the game, the enemies, you can't escape from the enemies, right? They send these hit squad and you're captured and you have to do something to escape, to move forward with the plot of the game. And that's a lot of people complain about that. I totally understand that. It's annoying. And at the same time, I sort of get the main reason behind why it's annoying, because you lose control as a player. You no longer have control when you get to progress the storyline, right? You're just doing unrelated stuff, maybe. Well, the way that they've designed that game, I think Far Cry 5, is that they're trying to integrate the world activity with the main plot line. That's the easiest way I could try to describe it. In a natural way, like freeing a base or something like that. I find thematically conceptually it's very interesting in what they're trying to do. It's how it's done that might cause problems and annoyances, because, as I say, as a player, you lose control of when you can progress the story, when someone just comes along and forcibly put you in a path. That's the basic idea behind it. When you lose that control, it becomes an annoyance. Video games, is about control. You have control to do some things, or at the very least, you have some choice in the matter. Generally speaking, especially when you're doing what you believe to be a routine sort of task, rather than a moment where you have to make a decision that could change the course of the story. I'm speaking in a very general sense here, and I can see that being a problem. But at the same time, it's a pretty cool concept where the enemy, where the world sort of reacts to you after you've done certain things. If you think about it, that is I like that idea. And Assassin's Creed Odyssey had something like that as well. If you're seen doing something like assassination in front of people or stealing, you have a bounty, right? The game world is reacting to you as a player, and they send bounty hunters after you. That is so cool. I like that idea because it's a reactive world now, rather than something static where you just go from point A to point B, activate that plot line, do this. If you do this, you get that. No, the NPCs, the story element, the world element, the game world elements are reacting to you. I mean, it can be just a visual thing, right? Like, say you destroy a whole town. This is not in any game. It might be, but I'm not aware of it. Say you destroy, I don't know, a trading route, and then you see visually something happens to the town where the trade route goes through. Like, say people become poor, there's more poor people in the street, something along those lines. It can be a visual thing, but at the same time, in terms of what Odyssey was doing, is having a reactive world where people are hunting you. I know that's not like a very Assassin's Creed thing, but to me, from a game design perspective, conceptually, at that level, it is very interesting, and I like that. And I hope that I can't imagine them wanting to do that with their other games. Ubisoft, I'm speaking of. But I hope maybe someday they or someone might implement it in a cool way, a reactive world, some sort of, maybe a villain that can grow alongside you. I mean, this is speculating way into the future here. I think, like with, what is it, the Shadow of Mordor had something like that with the generals, orcs and goblins, that you can, that if you don't take them out, they grow stronger, and you a villain that's going after you as well. I mean, after a while, I feel like that's very. It just feels gimmicky. Same way with the bounty hunters sort of thing, but the ideas are similar, right? It's similar, but I want them to expand a bit more on that. And with the way that Odyssey has done it, where because you're seeing things and people are seeing you doing, assassinations, it makes sense. With the Shadow Mortal, you're in a battlefield, and if you don't take out that particular enemy, they grow strong. It just seems a bit limited. I personally would prefer a bit more in terms of how they're expanding those type of components in a game. Anyway, that's just a very side thing. Oh, is it restarting again? It is. This whole thing's restarting again. You know what? I might... What I'll do is... for those that are watching this, I'm going to load up another game. So just bear with me for a moment. Oh, how long have I been on? Oh, an hour. Wow. You know what? We'll just leave it with this thing here. I mean, I've already gone. I'll try to go for a few more minutes. Oh, I've recently reinstalled Control again because I saw that they've got a new... they've made some changes to it, which is very interesting because I'd complained about the difficulties in Control. You can't change the difficulty. I somehow managed to finish that game, but they've reintroduced... Well, not reintroduced. They've introduced ways of making the game easier, like giving you more power, more health, your recovery... like how fast your bullet reload. That's incredible. More games should have stuff like that. Like you can adjust the fine tune these components. I really like that. It lets me go back and explore certain areas. I'm still not keen on tackling the molded worm, whatever that thing is. I've got horrible flashback of that experience, but and their DLC went on sale, so I picked that up as well. So it's something that I might not stream the whole thing from beginning again, but try to find the other bits and pieces of the side quest. Maybe the boss battles look ridiculous though. The other boss battle, I won't even call them mini bosses. They're crazy tough. I mean, I have to be... You can be invulnerable as well with the settings. I mean, I might have to set it to invulnerable to play those bits. We'll see. But yeah, I'm interested in further playing the DLC stuff. So I don't know. I might go back to that. I mean, there's a high possibility I'll go back to that. I'd gone back recently to take some screenshots. I can't seem to get the right type of screenshots. Still hunting for good ones in that game. I mean, there's quite a few, but something that I really enjoy. What else? I did talk about Control in terms of... Oh, the other thing we'd like to talk about Control is character. But it's not the character in terms of the characters walk around, talk and things like that. The character of the building itself, right? The oldest house. And comparing that with Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil 7's house? I've forgotten what it's called. How embarrassing. It belongs to the Baker family, right? Let me just double check. Yeah. I mean, the characters are incredible in that game as well. But in terms of comparing the building with from Control and the house in Resident Evil 7, they're both characters in their own way. Right? There's so much to talk about if I can structure it properly. Resident Evil 7 Baker's house. If you notice, I mean, it has horrific moments in there, horrific parts, right? But it is also a comfy sort of home because it was lived in by initially nice people. If you think about it, there are parts of it that are comfy until it got twisted, right? Obviously, I mean, it's got some weird. I don't know how they built in all those weird, like hidden rooms and things like that. But there are parts of it that seems comfy. Like I think the porch, like just outside, just before you go to the trailer. I think there's that bit there. I think it's not the lounge room. I think the kitchen area as well. There's this sense that it's lived in and by a nice family until, you know, horrible things happen to them. I'm talking in a general sense again, and in comparison with something like this is a comparing contrast with Control, the oldest house. That entire building is very alien. It's like an alien would to observe our building and restructure it in something that it thinks that how we would operate and live in. It's fascinating. I just find it's a character in itself. The entire building, how things are structured, how each areas look like, and how weirdly things flow from one place to another. If I could sit down and analyze this properly, I would. But I think I lack the ability to do it properly. I like to see. I'm sure there's people out there who's done it. But like, it's so fascinating how it all comes together. For the Control building. So that's what I wanted to say. The Control building being its own character. It's brutalist in design. You know, it's the wide spaces, which is weird in itself. And that one area, I think that had a cafeteria, I forgot what it's called, and the big tree in the middle. It's meant to, like, for me, it's meant to feel like, oh, it's a natural area. It's got trees and some plants, right? But at the same time, it's not. It feels, it almost feels, and that area always have the most terrible spawns of normal enemies as well. Like for me, it's just all sort of enemies just gets thrown in there at the end after you finish the game, or even before that. Even before finishing the game, you get all sort of enemies. But yeah. What was I gonna say about that room? Other than it being alien, feels like you're being, now every single room you feel like you're being watched, but with that room, there's this weird paradoxical feeling to it. You feel free, not free. Is that the right word? There's that contrast of the nature and artificial colliding. Feels right and not right at the same time. That makes sense. But that room stood out a lot for me anyway. I might talk about it a bit more next time as well. Alright, I think I might call it quits. I think that's it for now. I didn't even really progress with this game. What am I supposed to be doing in this game anyway? Am I supposed to put them in the right spot? I don't know what the rules are of this game. I'm just putting things in whichever parts I think is correct. I think this is incorrect anyway. Are we supposed to keep the birds away? That could be it. Nope. Oopsie. Failed. Right. Anyway, thank you anyone that's lurking or watching this on the archives. I'm gonna have to edit that entire blank spot out as well. Alright, yes, I hope you all have a good day or night. Take care. Stay safe. And once again, thank you for listening. I hope you all have a good one. Bye.